Hi everybody, I'm Mr. Hollander-Essig, and I'm here to talk about instrumental music, which you can do next year, which will be really nice at the beginning of the year to be able to start with something like that. However, I didn't get a chance to demonstrate the instruments to any of you this year, so I figure this is my chance on my back porch to show you the different instruments and let you hear them so you can start thinking about them. I will also give you links to the woodwind family and the brass family videos that I did earlier in our online learning so that you can find out more about those instruments as well. So, we'll start right out. The one I usually like to start with are the woodwinds. And we'll start with the woodwinds up on the top. We'll start with the flute. Now the flute is the highest woodwind that's offered. We do flute, clarinet, and saxophone. Those are the three instruments that we offer for beginners in Eastham and Wellfleet. The flute has a really nice sound. The hardest part about playing the flute is just making the sound. Now, I usually have students, when they start the first week, they work on the mouthpiece for about 10 minutes a day to try and get the sound, which could be kind of boring until you plug up the end. Slightly different sound. And if you move your finger or your hand and change the size of the hole, you can even get a train whistle going. Now, any one of the woodwind instruments can play any song at all, but we'll do a nice simple one. The sound is changed just by changing the length of the instrument, because on a woodwind instrument, as you know, the sound comes out of the holes and not necessarily the end. There's only one note that the sound comes out of the end on. And it's that one, the low C. So there's the flute. The flute is probably, of all the instruments we start on, the hardest one to start. Now listen to what I said. It's the hardest one to start on. And that's only because you're trying to make the sound on the mouthpiece. Once you get the sound on the mouthpiece, then it's no different than any other instrument. It's no harder. So once you get that first sound, you're okay. Now let's move on to the clarinet. For time's sake, I already have my clarinet all assembled. Normally, I would take it out a piece at a time and show you, but I will take out the reed and show you the reed. The reed is a small piece of bamboo. And yes, you put it in your mouth, which is why we don't share clarinets. And then you put it on the mouthpiece. The vibration of the reed is what makes the sound. Now, since I'm outside, I hope I don't scare any birds away, but I'm glad you hear what it sounds like. That's the sound of the reed in the mouthpiece. Now when the clarinet gets put together, the sound echoes through the clarinet. And the clarinet being a woodwind, the sound comes out of the hole, so the longer the instrument, the lower the sound. Now that, of course, was the Snake Charmer song played down low. The clarinet is one of the easier instruments to start on. Much like the recorder, you have the same type of fingering. We just call the notes a little different. Instead of B, A, G, That was E, D, C. Now the clarinet, while it's easy to start on, becomes much harder around January, because then we start using this little key on the back, and that's called the register key. Now taking the same Snake Charmer song and using the register key, this is what happens. So it makes it go up much higher. So there's the clarinet. Again, there's only two notes that actually come out of the bottom. This one and this one. So there's our clarinet, one of the easier instruments to start on. Now let's move to the third woodwind instrument, the alto saxophone. The alto saxophone always gets a lot of oohs and ahs, so if you're oohing and ahhing, I understand. Nice and shiny, looks cool. It has a mouthpiece and a reed, just like the clarinet. And it echoes inside, just like the clarinet. Now you notice I have a strap for the saxophone because this is how the saxophone is held, with your two thumbs and the strap. So if you don't have that strap, you can't hold it, because all of your fingers have to work the keys, except your right thumb. So the saxophone has a pretty nice sound. My favorite song to play on the saxophone is Sesame Street. That's my favorite song to play. Nice thing about the saxophone is when you learn fingerings and you want to go up an octave, you just put the octave key in the back, which is different than the clarinet. Saxophone is probably, of all the instruments we're starting on, the easiest one to start on until January, when you get to the really low notes. That's when it gets harder. But other than that, you're going to be reading notes. The most important thing about instrumental music is that you're going to learn how to read the music. Once you can read the music, you can play any instrument at all, and all you have to do is worry about the technique of the instrument rather than learning the language of music. So I stress the language of music. Now, while we're talking about the language of music, it's like any other skill you do. You need to do practicing in order to do it. And I always say there's that 8-letter ugly word, and it's practice. And that's what's necessary. And I suggest usually 5 to 6 days a week. If you do 5 to 6 days a week on the instrument you choose, you will be successful. I can pretty much guarantee that. Or 5 to 6 days each week. If you don't do 5 to 6 days, and you do maybe 1 or 2, or sometimes forget completely, I can pretty much guarantee you won't be successful at all at the instrument you choose. And this is the instrument you are choosing. Now, we have some instruments. We also have instruments available through some companies that they can be rented, so if you don't have one, that's okay. If you have one in a closet at home, or a family member already has one and that's the one you want to do, that's great too. If you want to do an instrument and you already have one, that's fine. We can work all that out. That's not a problem. Again, right now, you don't have to make a choice. You can just think about it. You can watch the video. You can look at the websites I'm going to put on so you can get more information about each one. So let's move on to the string family now. The string family has two main members that we do. We do the violin and the cello. Those are the two instruments that we start on the strings. You get to choose, if you want to do a string instrument, which one you want. Now the violin comes in different sizes. I like doing that on the violin. It's kind of cool to slide your finger right up there. The violin is done just by changing the length of the string. If you're really short right now, they make smaller violins. If fifth graders, normally, I say a 3/4 size violin is what we normally start you on because that's a good size for you. Sometimes we have half-size violins. Those of you that were in 3rd grade have been doing half-size and quarter-size violins in Wellfleet, so you understand there's the different sizes. This one is a full-size violin. And like any other instrument, you can play all of the songs so you can turn around and play all the songs with all the other instruments on the violin or the cello. Now this is a string instrument, so we're using a bow as well. These are the ones that are kind of hard to keep in tune. We work on that early in the year. They finally get to the point where they kind of hang in there, and they don't take a whole lot of work each week, although when you come in each week before a lesson, I end up retuning them. Or we figure out how to do it, like we did this year with our online learning, and we sort of get that done. Okay. Violin. Now let's move to the larger one, the cello. Unfortunately, I don't have a chair out here. It would be a good idea, but none of my chairs are out right now. So I'm going to still use the same bow, and I'm going to move to the cello. This cello happens to be a half-size cello. Half-size cello is probably pretty good for most 5th graders. I did have one 5th grader one year that used a full-size cello. Full-size cellos end up being quite a bit more, but the size doesn't matter because the sound is the same. So see, these are the nice low sounds. These sounds actually match what the trombone would end up doing. And when you're sitting down with the cello, playing the cello, it just rests right against your shoulder and your body so that your hand is right here playing it. It's got a really nice sound. I like the sound of the cello. I think I like the sound of the cello because it matches my voice. I can go to the low C and I can get up to here. So I can sing all of those notes, and I think that's one reason why I kind of like doing the cello and working with the cello. But here's the cello. It's quite a bit heavier than the violin. It's a little harder to carry around. And yes, it will have to go home every week and come back every week for band and lessons. And of course, it'll have to be practiced on at home. So there's your cello. Those are the two choices for string instruments. So just to review quickly, we have flute, clarinet, and saxophone in the woodwind family, and the violin and the cello in the string family. Now we're going to move on to the brass family. Now, in case there's a question about the saxophone looking like a brass instrument, yes, it is made of the same material, but it's the way the sound is produced that makes it into a woodwind instrument as opposed to a brass instrument. Brass instruments, the sound comes out of the bell. It's the only place the sound comes out of. I always wanted to play the trombone when I was really little, and I was told that I was too small. And I was. I was a real tiny student. And they actually had me starting on a cornet because even the trumpet was too big for me. And I found out years later when I finally got to play a trombone, I didn't really want to play the trombone. I wanted to be able to do this. That's all I really wanted to do on the trombone. And I kind of got spoiled because I learned how to do all this stuff on the trumpet and then eventually got to the trombone and just played with it. I will tell you, my trombone player this year likes playing the song that goes like that. Because she gets to do all that sliding. And that particular song was Rockin' On Home, the trombone part that was played by our trombone player this year. So the trombone starts off with a mouthpiece. And you buzz your lips. You just go into the mouthpiece. Now, of course, you do it a little faster. You kind of go like this in order to get the sound. And this is what it sounds like. And you can play a song on just a mouthpiece. But when you put it inside the trombone, again, the sound echoes. So it gives a much nicer sound. Now the question always comes up, well, how do you know where to put your hand? How do you know which position is which? So when you go, well, the trombone has 7 positions, and the first one is all the way in. So you have 1, and the last one, the 6th one, is way out here. Wait, we said 7, didn't we? Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. To give us all of those different positions there. And that gives us the scale to be able to play. And you do get used to where the positions are pretty quickly, because 1 is all the way in, 3, my fingers just touch the bell, 4 goes just beyond the bell, and 6, my arm's out. And if you're shorter, your arm will really be stretched out, but you can get to 6. And as long as you can reach 6, which is the second note you learn, you're okay to go on the trombone. Trombones do not come in other sizes. They come in just one size, and unfortunately, it doesn't fit all, as I found out when I was younger. So now let's move on to the other brass instrument, the trumpet. Trumpet, same thing. Smaller mouthpiece. And all we do is buzz our lips. The better you can buzz your lips, the better the sound in the trumpet, because that buzzing is going to echo inside the trumpet. Now we have 3 valves on the trumpet. That doesn't mean you can only play 3 notes. It means you have 7 combinations, just like the trombone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have just like on the trombone. The big thing, remember, which I haven't mentioned a second time yet, is that 8-letter ugly word. Practice. Every one of these instruments is going to take practice. It's just like any other skill you want to do. Soccer, you want to learn how to kick the ball to where it needs to be and aim it right there. You've got to get out there and practice on how to do that. You get to the point where you don't think about kicking the ball anymore. You just do it. But when you were first learning, you had to remember to plant your foot and everything else. Well, with the instruments, the same thing happens. You have to practice that skill in order to be able to get better at it and then to not have to think about it. So, one of the favorite things I like to play on the trumpet that's one of my favorite things. And sometimes we have trumpet players that can actually get all of those notes in the first year. This year I had some trumpet players that on Memorial Day came out to the windmill with me, and we all played taps together in the afternoon for the Taps Across America, which was really kind of cool. And we will learn some bugle calls, because after all, the trumpet is just a fancier bugle, which has been around a long time. Now this year we did a lot of other songs too. This year one of the songs we did was Old Town Road for our final virtual concert this year. And that worked out okay, but that was kind of hard. By the end of the year, I try and give some challenges. And most of the students this year have sat there and said, I can't believe what we managed to play. But again, that comes down to that 8-letter word, practice. So let's go to the last family. And the last family that we have is the percussion family. Now, I don't have all of my percussion equipment here because it didn't come home with me. What I do have here right now is a snare drum. And I will tell you, the beginning of the year we start off with orchestra bells. And the reason we start off with orchestra bells, because as I said in the beginning, the important thing is to learn how to read the music. And it makes sense then when you switch over to the snare drum parts and you're only playing rhythm and no melody. That's important to understand what you're seeing on the page. So I have a snare drum here, and I have a set of sticks, and I have a case. Now I will tell you, the biggest complaint about the snare drum and the bells is it weighs 22 pounds when it's in its kit, because it comes as a kit with the bells, the snare drum, the stand, a case. Usually they have wheels, but it's 22 pounds, and you're bringing it in and out each week. So I want you to understand that. It's not that it's impossible to do, because we've had students do it all the time, but just be aware of that. Now, I will get the snare drum and just bring it over here. Now, I have a snare drum. When I left school, I did not grab a stand, which has been a problem, because I've had to put it on a little stool in order to get it to play properly. But even playing the drums is not just taking sticks and banging things. That's the thing that a lot of people think. Playing the snare drum and playing the bells takes a lot of practice, because not only do you have to learn how to hit the drum, you have to learn how to control the stick while you hit the drum. You know, most people when they hit a drum for the first time, they just bang away and they go like that. Well, they have to learn single stroke. Then they have to learn double stroke. And that's one movement, but 2 bounces. Then they learn multiple strokes, which is 4 or 5 bounces to one movement. Each one of those has to be controlled. And that's what you end up learning on the rudiments. You also learn flams. You also learn, I think we got to about 13 rudiments this year of the 26 main rudiments, which are the things that snare drummers and other drummers have to be able to do. Now for the parents, these things come with a practice pad, which still allows the drum to be practiced and all the bouncing to take place, but saves sanity at times. So for those of you considering percussion, understand you will be a percussion player, which means you'll be doing bells. There will also be times you'll be using cymbals and a bass drum as well. We don't just learn the bells or the snare drum. It's just the bells and the snare drum are what you have. So just a quick review of everything here. Most important thing about this whole program is you will learn how to read music. By the time we get to the end of the year, you will understand what's on that page, and you will be getting better and better and better at it. You will also need to practice. That 8-letter word is very important. 5 days each week, 15 minutes a day, I can pretty much guarantee you'll be successful. In all the years I've taught instruments, I have only had one person that I had to change instruments on because they couldn't play their first instrument that they chose. Or occasionally where somebody will say, can I switch instruments after I start? The answer is usually no. And on my website, which I will give a link to that shows all the pictures of the instruments, I will give a link to that. One of the questions on there is, can I switch? And again, usually the answer is no. I have had people that have switched, but it's only because they've been amazing on the instrument they've been, and I usually let them try their second choice and tell them when they catch up with the other stuff they're doing, and they're as good as the kids that have already been playing, then they can switch. And those students usually manage to do it. So remember, you don't have to make a choice right now. Think about it. I will send a couple of emails during the summer reminding people to be thinking about it and giving instructions. Of course, we have to have a better idea of what's going on first before we know what's happening too. So I hope you all have a wonderful summer. Stay safe, stay well, and maybe I'll see you next year doing lessons on instruments. Bye.